Okay, so in this section in 1.5, we're going to add or subtract the polynomials given here. The biggest trick here that I like to tell my students is if I see a negative on the outside of a parentheses, the first thing I want to do is I want to distribute that negative to each piece inside. So we've got to be very careful here. So we've got a little trinomial in here, so that means we're going to distribute that negative, okay? It's like having a -1 on the outside of the parentheses. So we multiply each piece in here by -1, all right? So when we do that, all we're doing basically is changing the sign. So this positive 2xz turns into minus 2xz. This positive 3y turns into minus 3y. And then this negative x squared z turns into, I'm sorry, this positive turns into a negative x squared z, okay? Now out here, on outside of the parentheses, we don't have anything out there. That's kind of understood one, so we can just leave this first part the same. So I'm going to go ahead and write this down here, just so we have everything on the same line for you. Okay? So at this point, what I want to do is I want to collect all my like terms, okay? So first term I see is -4x cubed y. So I'm looking for another x cubed y. So that's just got an x, that doesn't have an x, only one x, no x, and that's an x squared. So this is the only one that's like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just write that down. So -4x cubed y, it's the only one of its kind. Okay, next up I'm looking for xz terms. So there's an xz term here. Now this is just a y, so that didn't work. Here's an xz term right here, okay? And then that's a y, and then that's an x squared z. So that's not going to work. So we need to combine these two terms here, a positive 2xz and a negative 2xz. So when I add 2 and I subtract 2, those cancel each other, and those terms actually drop out, okay? All right, moving on. I have a negative 3y. So I'll look for other terms that just have a y. Okay, this is a negative 3y. So negative 3y and negative 3y make what? Well, that actually makes negative 6y. Okay, so I'm actually going to write this down because they don't cancel each other out. Now, what have I covered them all? So I got that one, I got that one, this one, this one. See how I marked them as I was going? That's a good way to keep track. Now all that's left is this little guy right here. And so we're just going to tack him on at the end, x squared z, okay? So here's our final answer. If you wanted to, you could write this in descending order. So that just means we're going to put the big guy first, x cubed y, that's a degree 4 term. And then the negative x squared z, that's a degree 3. And then last, the 6y. Unless you're asked to do this, I wouldn't worry about it. Typically on a test, we're just looking to get you to this point here, okay? Now, last thing I want to talk about is how to multiply, all right? So whenever I've got two binomials that I'm multiplying together, bi means two terms, so I've got a 2 term here and a 2 term here. I want to do what's called double distributing. A little trick you might have learned back in high school is the FOIL trick. FOIL. So what does this mean? So FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, and last, okay? So what's first, okay? So the first term is this 7y squared and this y squared. They're both first in my binomial. So I want to multiply those two together, okay? So whenever I do this, I get what? Well, I'm going to get 7y squared times y squared. Okay, so I have 2 y's here and 2 y's here, so how many total? 4 y's total, okay? And then so that's the first term. So what's next? The outer term, okay, so what's outside? We'll put O for outside. So that's on the outside. And this is on the outside. Notice how I included that negative with this 5x term, okay? So I'm going to multiply these two terms together, Okay, so when I multiply these two terms together, what do I get? 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. Y squared times x, that's just xy squared. We can't do anything else with that. They're two different creatures. Okay? Now, that takes care of my outer. What do we have left? We've got an inner. Okay, let's try inner. So inner would be this x here and this y squared here. So if I multiply the insides together, what do I get? I get x times y squared. Once again, I can't do anything with that more than just multiplying. And so that takes care of my inner step. And then the last step here, I take my last pieces. Okay, so I'm going to do L for last and my last right here. Okay, so I'm going to multiply those together. So I have x multiplied by negative 5x. All right, so those are the last terms. So that would be negative 5x squared. Okay, so when I look at this, I think, okay, is there anything I can combine? The y to the fourth and x squared, can't do anything with that. But if I look at these middle terms, xy squared and xy squared, I've got negative 35 of those, and I actually have one of these. So when I combine these two, I'm going to get negative 34 xy squared. Okay, and then so I need to add on these terms. Don't forget about your 7y to the fourth, and also your negative 5x squared. Okay, all right, so that's the FOIL, also known as double distribute. So the distributive property, when we multiply a number that's outside the parentheses by everything that's inside. All right, cool.